can just close the comments on it and be done with it, leave it there for them to read and see how it went, or you can hide the whole thing from the public and nobody would ever know. It would be available on the back end.
Mine will take a while. Go there.
Can this be restricted to one comment per poster?
That's one of my questions.
The way that the systems are designed, they're without actually allowing them to set up registration with the website, there's no way to regulate how many times that they actually do make a comment. Now, if you want, that can be adjusted so that they have to log into the website to be able to get to the public comment section. But what that does, in a sense, is anybody who's not really wanting to comment on the section, they can't see it. So it's kind of a back and forth type situation where if you want it to have limited logins, what I can do is I can put a guide on it that basically says that if they post, they can't post for so many days. Whereas it locks it down where if they try to log in and comment and they use the same login information, to post their name and information, if the system would recognize that that person has already done it. But as far as them changing their name, now if they change their name, use a different email address, it would show up as another comment. But the only way to truly lock it down is to make it where they have to register with the Eureka Springs website, and then you run into stuff where you have to start maintaining your registry, you have to start watching who it is, making sure that they're not spamming the comment section. It can get even more hairy than just going in and removing a couple of posts that somebody has made on the site.
Well, I think to eliminate the back and forth, I'd like to see about a 48-hour wait period before they can post again.
Okay, that can be done. I can put a 48-hour, I can put a 72-hour hold on it. Whereas if they make a comment and they try to go back and comment again under the same name, it won't allow them to do it.
Go ahead. Make your hand folks.
Okay, two questions. When it gets closed down, the question has been answered sufficiently.
Now, what it does is it'll show that the comment section has been removed. So when you get down to the bottom, wherever you would when you would actually click the comment button is gone. There's no way to comment on it. There's no way for it to
So they would be sitting there typing up an answer and then find out they couldn't post.
Right. No, the only way to post on this is to actually click the comment button, put your information into it, email address, your name, who you are, and then it has the section down there for you to type your comment. When you hit the submit button, it takes all that information and then places it into the system.
And in case of an inappropriate response, since we would have the information, the email and stuff, we could not only delete that comment, but email them and say this is not permitted, allowed, wanted.
Yes, any information that's entered into a website becomes the domain and ownership of the city because it is the city's website.
But we could also delete that comment.
Yes, you can delete the comment, get the information off of it, take down their information to be able to send them an email.
Okay.
You're about to run into a huge can of worms if you start pulling people's comments for anything other than that they're being pornographic.
Okay.
Because
we have to keep that in mind.
Very much in mind.
Yeah, it's not comments that are just because you don't like what they're saying. I mean, they have to be cussing, cursing, being derogatory.
So if we
there are
get two
guidelines.
people arguing an issue back and forth, we would have to close down the whole question?
You'd probably have to close the whole question rather than pull one or both of them's permission.
Okay.
Because you would be then censoring their speech.
See why I ask these questions when you're here?
Yeah, you have to establish a guideline where, I mean, you can't just because you don't like what they're saying, you can't go and remove it.
Yeah,
it has to be vulgar or inappropriate posting that defiles the actual content.
My whole concept in asking you to do this was to not have a dialogue back and forth.
Yeah,
so
this
what's
isn't.
the longest period of time you can put on there as a restriction? Our intent here is not to have, well, so-and-so said this and I'm responding to that 3 days later. We don't need that. What we need is just recommendations, suggestions,
The
comments
best way I
on
can see to be
topic.
able to do what I think what it is that you're wanting to try to accomplish is the fact that they would actually have to register with the website. And then by logging into the website, that gives them a username and a password to which they are allowed to be able to post in the town hall. Otherwise, it is, you can post anonymously because it's an open, at that point it's open. But beings that if you set it up where they have to register to be able to post, then granted they can register another name.
So you would you be the person that actually did that maintained that registry and all that kind of stuff?
If called upon the city now, since we're talking about now in the proposal for digitizing the information for the records, that also included anything having to do with the website. So if there's an issue with the website, that's actually included in that proposal that y'all have, that 2 years. So for the next 2 years during the course of that contract, if need be, then I can monitor the website and check it periodically and make sure that nothing's going on as far as that's concerned.
I think generally it's a good idea, but knowing the contentious nature of some of the citizenry, I think we don't want to have dialogue back and
So
forth.
you're looking at
So
72
what's the
plus
longest?
hours?
What's the longest restriction, guidance restriction that you can put?
I do believe that the site allows you to put up to, I'm trying to think on the server side of it. I think the server can block the IP for up to 5 days, I think is what the...
Well, let's try a 5-day initially. I mean, whatever the longest period is, and let's do a test run on this and see what happens. With a particular topic.
Okay, yeah, I can get it finished coding them back in probably in a couple of days to get that set up in there.
If you have more than one issue or one question or whatever you want to call it on there that the city has presented, and if a person responds to one, does that limit them from responding to another one for that same time frame?
Okay,
We were just going to have one topic at a time.
that was kind of what I was doing.
Oh, is that
I was
right?
under the impression that this was going to be a one topic they would post for, say, so many days.
I
It
see.
can be set
Oh, okay.
for that topic. That's the other thing I meant to. I didn't have my notes right here in front of me, but in the way that these are set up, you can actually set a time in which you can say that the topic is open for discussion at this particular point, and then set a date in the calendar, because I already have a calendar system embedded in the website, that at that particular date it will automatically close any comments from being done on that particular subject.
But a lot of the council members' emails will be on, they're on the website anyway, right?
I do believe they already are.
So
Yeah.
that should take
That
care
was
of a
one
lot
of the
issues.
pages that I worked with Diane that made sure that all the council members were correct and that their terms were correct and their email addresses.
Go ahead.
Well, I heard you say that you can't post about something that isn't already an initiated topic. In other words, I couldn't introduce a new topic. I see this thing, really, its value to the local citizenry as an information thing. People asking questions that they don't want to call City Hall or find out who to talk to, like...
Purpose, no.
Well, I don't see it being used that way by citizens. If they have something here and they can post on there and they have a question like, how do I get rid of an old refrigerator? Or
Well,
where
in
do I
case,
sign up for the CABC?
There is a way, and I think the city attorney will even agree with me. We can put a disclaimer on there that basically says that anything that's not related to the topic at hand can be removed without notice. And I do believe that is, if they're not responding to
You're
the
on the edge.
right. But if I remember right from some stuff that I was reading, if you have it on there where if they're not pertaining to this specific topic, then you can remove that because it's not related to the topic that has been proposed. So.
Before we get too complicated, just keep it one topic at a time, finite period of time, and in your opening little statement there, the little introductory sentence, say, if you have any other questions or concerns, please contact your city council persons at these email addresses. I mean, that,
Yeah, because I can link
That's
that
the way we're
straight back
contacted
to
now,
the
so.
to the contact page. For
I,
the
I
city
just didn't
council.
want, I don't want this to get to be like Geek Festamania, you know.
Well, another thing is to like you were saying, give it a try and then see what happens. And if it does get out of hand, then it's just like any other privilege. You can close it and take it away.
I like the idea and I understand the concept, and I think it's a great thing for the city collectively to have decided a topic somehow, some way, that will be posted on there that we are soliciting input on. And I think that's what it's for. But the whole, and I understand that we have a golden opportunity with this gentleman here to be the IT maintenance person of that system. But the management of it, the putting on of the topic that is decided to be put on there, and that is still missing. I would then, I hate to assume because that can be dangerous, but I would assume that is an administrative function that should follow under the mayor, who will then appoint somebody to be the liaison to assure that this system runs, because the ongoing, not IT maintenance, but the ongoing topic maintenance and collection of comments becomes very important, as does after you finish digitalizing all of the records. Then what is the, and again, this is an administrative thing for the mayor, I'm positive, who at that point in the system, who's going to do it, and how's it going to get done, and do we have the scanners and all the other stuff to keep it going?
Most any of the flatbed scanners that are currently within the building can scan to PDF.
Okay.
It's a very simple program. Matter of fact, I think there's even a couple of free versions of it that can be installed on the computer, and it's just a matter of putting it on there and say scan, and it'll scan it into PDF form. Uploading to the server is not that part of a deal either, and the backups are done off of the server itself, not off of individual computer.
Mr. DeVito.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract for 2 years to digitize the city records and to set up a town hall website on the city website.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So shall it be done. All right, thank you. All right. Moves us on to number 3. We had postponed number 2, so we're moving to number 3. Should be the second reading of ordinance 2181. Motion to discuss. Second.
Second.
Okay. Floor is open. Mr. DeVito.
Move to suspend the rules and place ordinance number 2181 on second reading by title only.
Second.
Roll call vote on suspension.
Mr. Kirkupile,
Yes.
Zeller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito.
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
6-0. Ordinance number 2181, an ordinance amending Eureka Springs Municipal Code, Title 4.
Mr. DeVito.
Move to approve ordinance number 2181 on its second reading.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Get mine? Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. That moves us to number 5. Number 4 was postponed. Which would be third reading of ordinance 2180.
Move to discuss.
Second. Floor is open.
I move to suspend the rules and read ordinance number 2180 by title only for its third and final reading.
Second.
Very good.
We're so proud of you.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Ms. Schneider,
Yes.
Ms. Zeller,
Yes.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Pyle,
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. Read it.
Ordinance number 2180, an ordinance amending the Eureka Springs Municipal Code, subsection 8.48.
Mr. DeVito.
Move to approve ordinance number 2180 on its third reading.
Second?
All in favor?
Oh, third reading, we need roll call. Sorry.
Okay, roll.
Somebody second it.
It has been.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Ms. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. McClung,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Mr. Pyle,
Yes.
Ms. Zeller,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. Moves us on to number 6, weekly rental rules and regulations. Motion
Move
to discuss.
Second.
Floor is open. Ms. Snyder.
Okay, this is going to be one of two very contentious items on our agenda tonight. This weekly rental has got neighbor against neighbor, splitting the town in half, splitting us. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's not that big of a thing. It's gotten so out of hand, it's unbelievable. Through whether it's a legal loophole or whether it's an undefined situation is pretty much immaterial. What I would like to see done is to remove our weekly rentals from the 199s, give it its own rules and regulations, and a CUP. This pulls it out of the 199 catch-all. It gives us in planning a chance to clarify, one way or another, exactly what a weekly rental would entail. It is something that is needed in many ways, even if it's only through people who are here locally to work for a week or two, who have been sent here from another state by their company. It's something that, frankly, I'm tired of hearing is hurting other businesses. That's what America is based on. You want your business to do good, you do it good. If you aren't doing good, don't blame someone else. All of this has been coming up. I have been verbally threatened and screamed at after the last meeting, which I will not tolerate again. We have had various officials threatened, and why? Because of a loophole. So I would really like to see us give it its own thing, give it its own description, its own rules and regulations, make it a CUP, and once that is done, then it's decided by planning and or the council on if someone who wants to have a weekly may have a weekly. But it has got to be clarified on its own. The threats need to stop from all parties. The insanity needs to stop. The rudeness needs to stop. And I think this will probably be the best solution. Plus, by removing it from 199, we don't have this problem, is it legal or not? We need to decide if it's legal or not, because this has obviously gone on for decades.
Mr. DeVito.
Just to clear up some misconceptions, 199 does not establish any criteria for any business. It is a catch-all. We are governed by Arkansas law regarding weekly rentals as a landlord-tenant relationship that does not require collecting taxes, so you don't need to have a 199 to be in a landlord-tenant relationship. This is not about competition. This is not about money. This is about keeping the integrity of the neighborhoods in this community, and that's what I'm all about.
Mitchell.
Question for the attorney. Mr. Weaver, last council, somewhere about December, give or take, you produced an ordinance, draft form, on this topic. Not paraphrasing what you'd done, but you obviously put some thought into it. You wrote it, you drafted it, and based on the data you had at that time that you thought would resolve the issue, sealing it around X number that were in operation at that time, and basically stopping the process, as I remember the ordinance, and I don't have it with me right now. Are you still in favor of utilizing that ordinance to resolve this topic?
Maybe not that exact wording of it, but something a very similar device, I think, would produce what I perceive that most people are looking for. A stop of a proliferation of people making transient stays within our R1 particularly, but R2 too.
Can I follow up with that? Based on that, would it take you very much to come up with a draft that you could present to this council that we could look at that would wrap this up?
I don't think it would necessarily. I think that maybe I need to check with the Planning Commission again to make sure that they don't have any different input from where they were before. But I think you could have something to look at, and it may be the exact wording of the last ordinance by the next council session.
Snyder.
By giving it its own business license and rules and regs and CUP, would that not include the definition and whatever this would entail?
Well, I think in trying to respond to that, I'm somewhat at a loss exactly why you're dealing with a business license, unless you are trying to allow additional tourist trade within those specific zones.
Because I really feel that by restricting to non-tourist only, we're going to get into a can of worms of proving. Are they here working for a week? Are they here looking for a home? Are they here visiting for a week? We don't need to continue to pit neighbor against neighbor. If we restrict it to R2 and install the 200-foot ruling, the neighbors have the right to say something while the person has the right to maybe help with their income. I don't like this restriction of only one type of person, because then you're asking people to start questioning who are these people.
Well, I think you already have that somewhat in place. I mean, in R2, you can receive a cup to basically do what you're talking about, and you can't do that in R1. And so if you think that is sufficient, then you may conclude, just as the last council, that it's already in place.
But that's been the contention, that this is a loophole that has all of a sudden been jumped on. I want it clarified. If we clarify, it's got to have some place to go. Now, whether it's added under tourist lodging or B&B or whatever, that isn't the point. The fact that it's going to be named, clarified with the CUP and rules and regs. That's what makes a difference.
I don't see how that would specifically address what's going on in R1. Because what you have
allowed in R1.
Well, what you have in R1 right now is you have no restriction on a landlord-tenant relationship of 7 days.
But they do have a restriction on new tourist lodging. See, this is what I'm saying. This is the problem with this. It's got to be defined and clarified. When we define it and clarify it, then it can be put in the appropriate place. But as it stands right now, it depends on a matter of opinion. And in regards to matter of opinion, we haven't been able to decide yet if this is legal or not. So how can the mayor be served with a writ of mandamus for not doing his job when we don't know what it is? He obviously doesn't either. This is the kind of stuff that's going on and needs to end.
Mr. DeVito.
I move to table this item to allow the city attorney to meet with the planning chair to develop an ordinance for our next meeting.
Second.
Mr. Snyder.
He can write up an ordinance or whatever, but don't we still have to decide what this is going to be, if anything, so he knows
The
where or
motion
how?
on the table is to defer this to the next meeting.
So he can do this, and I'm asking, don't we still need to decide so he knows what he's supposed to be writing up?
Why don't we let him tell us?
Mr. Wheeler.
The only suggestion I would have that might short circuit what Mr. DeVito has just proposed to tabling here is, if you really believe that there's a writ of mandamus possibly going to be filed for, this council has the ability to pass a resolution or other device to stay any prosecutions. Now, that's a very, very open-ended thing to do, but it would prevent a court from being able to issue a writ if you have said we're not enforcing this until we've got further clarity. But
We're not enforcing what?
what you what the
Writ
writ
says.
We're
is
not
trying to
enforcing
say.
anything now anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Because we don't know if we're supposed to be.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. Eller?
Okay, we can discuss this?
The motion on the table.
Yeah, motion on
Okay,
postpone.
so we can discuss this?
No.
to postpone or not. Then we'll have to take a vote on the motion.
Oh, okay. Well, if we can't discuss it anymore.
Ms. Snyder?
How can we postpone something that we still don't know what it is? Why do we keep
We just
postponing?
have to vote on
Point
it.
of order.
Yes. State your point of order.
Point of order is the motion on the table is to table this motion until the next meeting.
Okay. All right, without any further discussion, all in favor say aye.
give her
Aye.
a roll call.
Sorry.
She needs a roll call.
Roll call? For what reason? So on now.
A roll call is normally done when you have a point of, or when you have a motion to table, because that's an extraordinary measure other than what you're discussing.
Okay. So shall it be?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Eller,
No.
Ms. Schneider,
No.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Mr. Perky Pile.
No.
Mr. McClung,
No.
2-4.
It's back on the table. Ms. Snyder?
Can we decide one step at a time on this? Is it legal? Is it illegal? Are we going to make it legal if it is illegal? Is this something we need? We've got to start somewhere.
Mr. McClung?
Two things. One, if I understand Ms. Snyder correctly, really all she's wanting to do is to open R1 back up to conditional use permit for
No, no, no,
tourist
no,
lodging.
No.
Well, you may say no, but that's really what it is.
No, I said restrict R2.
So, I mean, that's, I think, the attorney, it seems to me that this thing really got askew for a lot of different reasons, that people got involved and did things that maybe they overstepped their authority, but it's all done, and there's not anything we can do about what has been done in that respect. Now, I agree with James that the bringing that the ordinance that Mr. Weaver had drafted back to the table is the right thing to do, so we can have something to go off of, to build whatever it is we need to build and how we want to build it, to make it work. I'm really torn with this thing because it's just because it puts people at odds. But that's unfortunate. It happens. But it's up to us to make it work. So I think we need to be able to discuss it and then follow through with Mr. Weaver's ordinance to some degree.
Mitchell.
I'd like to make a motion that the City Council direct the City Attorney to take the prior draft ordinance presented at the last council, based on input to this point, present to council at the next meeting a draft ordinance on this topic.
For a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Snyder.
We can allow this in both R1 and R2, providing the CUP with regulations is involved and the 200-foot rule. Then it's up to each neighborhood on if they want to have something like this going on. I have no problem with both R1 and R2, but it's got to be a CUP type situation or emphatic rules. We can't just let every Tom, Dick, and Harry do whatever they want. That ruins the neighborhoods. We've got to have guidelines.
So?
I think, okay, is the situation now, and frankly, at this point, there's so many opinions on what the zoning says that I don't know what it says. Okay, is the situation now that R1 zoning generally includes where all of the historic houses are, the residential houses? That R1 is basically what we're trying to protect here.
It's Victorian residential.
Yeah, well, there is Victorian residential. Yeah, there is a...
Well, I mean, that's R1.
Yeah, but, okay, so R1 is where what we're trying to accomplish here is that we don't want these neighborhoods, these R1 neighborhoods, which are basically very historical, and quite frankly, the only ones that exist in the United States anymore. We are probably the only city in the United States that has a shot at becoming 200 years old with historical buildings. Nobody else can do this because they're all gone. We're the only one that's left. So to protect those R1 neighborhoods, we don't want some of these properties being rented out and turning over constantly, because that gives a commercial flavor to the neighborhood, which we don't want. But we can understand that there are people who would like the experience of living in a Victorian town. So can we compromise here in just R1 and saying you cannot rent any residential facility in an R1 neighborhood for less than a calendar month at a time? And that would prevent the constant turnover and make it enforceable like the Disabilities Act is, that someone in the neighborhood has to complain that there's been a violation. And when there's a complaint filed with the building inspector, within 48 hours, he has to show up at this rental property and look at the register and establish that the people that are living there now have indeed rented it for a month. They have signed the lease and they have put down at least half of the rental amount for that. And in order to make it so that we don't have this business that's going on now is, well, the law says you have to rent it for a month, and it's yours for a month if you want it, but you only have to pay for the nights that you actually stay there, which is the way you get around the law. The problem is that in this town, we have two schools of thought, so the preservationists and the people who don't see preservation as a valid thing. And they will find a way around almost any law we write unless we make it very restrictive. And then allow this rental in R2, but make it only with a CUP, and that is not transferable, so it doesn't enhance the value of the property in case it's sold. Do those sound like reasonable suggestions?
I think if you look at what last council looked at and what the other councilmen are suggesting bringing back to the table, a lot of those concepts are buried within that very ordinance.
But we just don't say it loud enough or plain enough so that people understand what it says, so they are not trying to get around it with all this Mickey Mousing that we have going on. No intent.
Excuse me?
No offense.
I think that, honestly, the ordinance says it was looked at last council and possibly with some tweaking. I don't know if planning has any other ideas or not, but I think that would put a stop to the growth of the problem that is perceived to be of transient. It's moving into R1.
Silly.
Changing the weekly to monthly is a good idea. It will also, and if we keep the spirit of non-transient rentals, then we'll have to grandfather in all the weeklies that are able to prove that they've engaged in landlord-tenant relationships. I'm against any weekly rentals by CUPs with any 200-foot margins, because what you've done is you've established another class of businesses in an R2 zone. You've already got the 200-foot on B&Bs, so you're just going to intersperse within that 200 feet other businesses. So you've lost more of the character of the neighborhood by allowing more commerce. Okay. Every time you allow commerce in a residential neighborhood, you dilute the value of commercial property. So this is a twofold thing. So be well aware that every time you allow industry in, you don't understand that concept? The more we have the ability for weekly rentals in C1 right now, so that any transient people or non-transients have the ability to rent. The more we allow into our residential neighborhoods, the more you're diluting commercial property. And we got a lot of commercial property sitting around right now doing nothing. So be well aware, this is twofold. You're unraveling the character of residential neighborhoods, but you're also impacting the value of commercial property when you do that. So this is twofold.
I can see that.
Mr. Mitchell.
You know, if council would allow the city attorney to bring that ordinance back to the table and allow council at this table to look at that ordinance, I think a lot of the discussion you're having tonight, my fellow aldermen, will find that it is addressed. It will not address Alderman DeVito's concern about those that are operating at this time. It in fact did grandfather that small group under. That might could be even looked at to be whittled down more, because some of them probably haven't paid CAPC taxes, may not have been active, and may have in fact dropped off. So that list may be smaller. But it put an end. It put an end to that. It put an end to that category and stopped it. It cleaned it up, and it fixed it, and it did everything that you're talking about tonight. So I would just honestly say, please let the attorney have an opportunity to bring something to the table.
Schneider.
Something I doubt any of us are aware of from the comments tonight, and I was not aware until these last couple of weeks. R2 does not have a 200-foot rule. R1 does. R2 doesn't. I had no clue. In fact, for 31 years, I thought I lived in an R1, and I live in an R2. So R2 does not have a 200-foot rule. And obviously, none of us know this. R1 does. But R1 also, and this is why we have to discuss, R1 has an ordinance that states they will not allow any new CUPs for tourist lodging. All the B&Bs and everything in R1, every single one is grandfathered. So in order to be able to allow this in R1, we're going to have to give it a designate name, and it can't be tourist lodging. And then that would have to be looked into, because I wouldn't know how to look into that in that regards, but no new CUPs, all these other things are grandfathered. I learned quite a few things looking through all of this stuff. It was amazing. And it's up to us to name it, to decide if it can be transferred or not. It's a lot. That's why I didn't want to just jump into write an ordinance, because these are the things that have to be thought about.
Mr. Birchbach.
Well, I've kind of held my voice on this. I disagree with Mr. DeVito on some of the aspects. Some aspects I agree. Mr. Mitchell, I do agree with bringing back this ordinance that Mr. Weaver had already started. Bring it as a starting point and start from there and build on it. In particular, I have a problem with all of a sudden now what was okay a year ago and was granted to certain people through this 199 process, even though it may not have been appropriate. But these people did it with the understanding that that was there, with the guidance of the city at the time, city and the council. Well, we just had a statement made by one of those applicants. Are you calling him a liar? I'm just saying, this is very emotional for you. And I think, when you say we're unraveling a neighborhood by adding commercial, that's what I'm in. I'm in R1. I have a commercial business here. I had a commercial business here. I'm addressing you. I find it particularly interesting that we cannot even address maintenance of these so-called historical buildings. I mean, I can point out a half a dozen that are failing right now, and another dozen that need maintenance. And these are mostly rentals, monthly rentals, residential neighborhoods. Whereas a person that has a nightly rental, or even a monthly rental, if that's what we want to call it, they maintain that business and that building. So, I think we have a little bit of I have a disagreement with where we're headed on this whole thing. I think a good start, and I'll stop here, a good start is to go with what Mr. Mitchell has said, and let's get the previous ordinance that the previous council had brought forward, and let's work forward with that.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. In a second. I hate to say this, but any further discussion?
Wait a minute. What motion?
As long as you take into mind what we've
Could the
discussed.
clerk please reread it if you don't
we will.
want?
We'll
Do I have to restate it?
We'll restate
There's
it.
absolutely no way I can repeat what you said. I can give you the gist of what
Okay,
you
can I clean it up then? Can I redo it?
Basically, the motion is
The gist of what you said,
first place.
you made a motion to direct the city attorney to take the ordinance presented to the last council and draft it appropriate for this topic.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, you got it, exactly. Thank you.
There
We
was
had
a
a
lot
second.
more. And Mr. McClung seconded.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Looks like 6-0. Moves us on to new business. Number one is an ordinance to rezone 123 South Main from R1 to C1. Motion to discuss.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Floor is open. Mr. Mitchell.
Question of Beverly, who's here, please, ma'am, if you don't mind. This went to planning, correct? And it passed planning?
Yes, it passed 4-1 at planning.
Okay. And
If you don't mind, I could give
Go
you
ahead. Yes,
just
ma'am.
a
Go
quick overview about this.
please.
If you would look, first of all, in case anybody that doesn't know, this is the property at the top of Plainer Hill where the statue is. And they should have given you a floor site plan of it, of what it is. And on page 400 in your book, it has the purpose of R1 listed. And on page 404 and 405, it has the purpose of C1. So when planning read through this, it seemed to us that the purpose fit more with a C1. Then on page 432, it has all the procedures and the paperwork, and that was done. 433, all the notifications, and that was done. Then on page 434 and 435, those are all the things that you need to consider when rezoning. And there was a couple of things in that list that didn't fit, such as if all the area around it is one thing, then if you rezone this, you're going to be making it a whole different zone. Spot zoning. That didn't exactly fit. But my commission felt that since there were already a couple of things up there that were done that way, that this might be appropriate. There was another thing on the list that said, would this rezone benefit the owner and not everyone? That again is something that you have to consider. Also in that list it said, what does your the master plan say about it? And the master plan says, one of the city's greatest assets of the historic district is the European village atmosphere it evokes. And it talks about the undeveloped length of property, 1,100 feet from the highway into the city, which creates the barrier. And it talks about the city buying that for green space, and that's a good thing to keep that barrier. But the city never did buy that. So there were a lot of things that you have to consider that seem to conflict each other. And so the Planning Commission did vote to approve this, yes. Another thing that you can consider is sending that whole section to planning to have us rezone. But you can't do that right now at this application.
Following up with you, and I'm not a proponent in any way, shape, or form of spot zoning. I venomously disagree with it. But has planning looked at potentially rezoning that whole corridor, or is that under discussion in planning?
When this was brought to our attention in the discussions, we would like to see both sides of it, C1, but the law, our code book, says that has to come from this table as a recommendation to us, because planning would have to spend some city money. I mean, we have it in our budget, but we would be spending city money to send out notices and to put notifications out there. And if we did that first without it having a chance of passing here, that would be money spent, foolishly. So it has to come from this table to planning for us to get that done and to have all those hearings.
Question?
Beverly, when you look at something like that, what do you go, 2 lots, 3 lots deep? I mean, you gotta, what did you approve on the Bramers, or what?
Just what they were asking. That's the only thing that you can do is the 8 lots that they are asking to be rezoned, because they initiated that rezoning application.
Okay,
So-
is that front and back lots? I mean, I've not seen the plat on that, so I'm not.
You should have it.
It's in your packet.
It's I knew how deep it was, like 80, did you tell me 80 foot deep?
That'd be front and back lots.
80 foot
Yeah,
deep.
the 80 foot deep. 40 across, 80 deep.
80 deep, right.
Okay.
This strip, this corridor coming down, as I recall, there's Casa Colina, then there's the Bellissimo, the condos, and then the only other thing I can remember is there's a little white house on the right-hand side, I believe a little lady lives in, that I occasionally see. So other than that, it's really all green space, isn't it, basically, coming down? And it's really
Well,
steep.
It's personal property.
Well, it's
right?
personal, but it's, well,
But it's
yeah, I'm
all-
sorry.
There's nothing else on it, right?
There's no development other than those three. Okay.
Mr. DeVino,
Question for Mr. Brammer.
come on up to the microphone.
Is there any sense of urgency? Could you wait for council to do the whole strip, or is there a sense of urgency that this be done?
There's not a sense of urgency, but the problem that it's just never been done, and the only way to start things process is by the personal property owner coming forward and continuing that process on, and hopefully it would spark the generation of other people going ahead and, because I bear the burden of the financials, the city doesn't have to do it, and then it's an arterial street. It's always been commercial all the way down it. It's never really, I mean, Mr. Mitchell's recommendation of one house being there, everything else between there is commercial from top to bottom, all the way down to the only thing of industrial. If I was going to ask you for industrial there, you would be creating one little spot of actual spot zoning. There are two little parcels that were, because they were commercial, they had kind of spot zoned them in essence, but they should have done it. I mean, planning should have done an overlay new map of its streets again and readopted it a long time ago. Most people that, when I brought this forward, they were kind of confused where I was asking to actually get rezoned. They were thinking it was my house up on the top of the street. I'm like, no, it's down on the highway. It's all highway frontage. Always has been. So it's not something you're going to envision for people to sit there and build residential houses for little children to play out in the street. I mean, and everybody that sat on planning did agree that it should be already commercial. So I'm trying, I mean, I've always done my homework before, and I wasn't going to ask for something that would be absolutely inappropriate. And I prefer to see in my vision no more C2 coming down the street. So, you know, I'd rather see a Victorian development than contemporary. But I don't know. I mean, if you have other questions, I don't know how else to address it. I wouldn't, and I'm not doing one single little lot. I'm doing a grid. So I'm not trying to create more spots, and I'm trying to actually cure the problem.
I think some of us are on board with it. I just didn't know if we could just do it all at once and get the whole street C1, or if we take your motion tonight and then go to direct council, planning. That was my only reason for the question.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we, the council, give the direction to planning commission to I guess their objective, before I make the motion, so the objective for the planning commission would be to assist the city attorney in drafting an ordinance to make all that contiguously simple to this.
That's the ordinance.
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about from where it ends on Main Street all the way up to the parking lot. I mean, that's what it needs to be.
Our code lists very specific things that we have to do. We have to put notifications out. We have to send letters to every owner along there. We have to have public hearings. And once that's complete, then we can bring that back to you with recommendations to rezone that whole
Yeah,
parcel.
my concern is that some of that, theirs is lotted, and they're looking at basically 80 feet deep, but some of that is unlotted in through there. And, so you have to be specific on depth and things of that nature too. It can't be just carte blanche. So, but yeah, that's I would like to make a motion that we have the planning commission get with the city attorney and prepare an ordinance to rezone the stretch from the museum to the parking lot. That's what's needed. I don't know if Casa Colina is C1.
That would be the transit parking lot you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if Casa Colina, if it's C1 or, huh? You're shaking your head, yes, but so, I mean, it's just tying it together.
I'll second that.
Does everybody understand the motion?
Both sides of the street.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second.
Who was the
You want the
second?
motion? Who was the second? David? David Mitchell. Does everybody understand the motion? Do we need to reread it? If not,
Did you say both sides of the road? Just the one side?
Both sides.
2C1, right?
Really?
I don't know what the other side even is.
On the other side.
This is Eureka, this is the,
What is the Bellissimo?
That's her lots right there.
It's C1 too.
this is Eureka property here. I think they,
We'll help them.
this is.
I'm
this
confused.
is- No, they don't know.
I thought my second was for, I thought we were doing both sides when
think
I
this is
seconded it.
already-
Whoa.
Both sides.
Thank you.
Well, wait a minute. We've got a resident that lives on the other side. How can you?
She can still be, yeah. We're not throwing her out.
Property value go up.
Okay.
Yeah, she'll actually make a lot of money.
okay. So would you restate?
Yes, I make
motion.
a motion, we have the planning commission get with the city attorney and work with making an ordinance, make all of 23, or Main Street, south of Main Street, south of what is not C2, change it into C2 all the way up to, all right, C1. C2, that's an explosive. C4. So, C1.
Okay.
See you later.
Do you understand the motion?
How's that?
Time to go home.
All the way to the top of the hill.
Explain to me again the two sides when you say,
Both sides of the highway,
okay,
both sides of Main Street, from where the C1 zoning ends, continue south to the top of Plainer Hill, or as far as necessary.
incredibly vague. Let's pick some specific, please.
All the way to the stop sign. How's that?
Highway 62.
All the way to Highway 62.
What's your bottom end?
Historical.
From wherever the C2
From the
ends,
museum,
or C1
From the
ends,
museum,
which
from the
could be the
museum
all the way up.
to the top of the.
to Highway 62. Both sides, thank you.
And I'll still second that.
Okay.
See, one goes all the way up to
Confused her.
the entrance to.
I think it's commercial too there now.
C1.
Couple spots are?
Be from the office.
But from there up,
store.
it is R1 and C2.
Yeah, so just to
And
make it
our-
all C1.
R1 looks like it appears to cut off just about past Casa Colina. And it moves C2 to the top of the hill,
Yeah, but just from where
according to this map.
C1 all the way up to where it's something else. How about that? You know,
Highway
So we
62
got
works.
to be a little more specific on that.
To Highway 62?
Yes.
Yeah, that works.
You
Okay.
understand what he's
Sure.
looking for. She gets it.
I'm all for it.
That's all that
Okay.
matters.
All right.
I think
We
Mr.
still have
Weaver
a-
kind of knows what I'm talking
We
about.
still have a qualified second on this one. Is that correct?
I'm
Now
still
that
seconding
it
that.
is
Yes,
both
sir.
sides?
Yes, sir. Now
Okay.
since it's both
So
sides.
you withdrawn your withdrawal, and now you're back on board. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any further discussion on it? If not, do we need to reread the motion for clarity? No, I mean for final clarity for TV land out here, because it's been kind of convoluted up until this
Okay.
point. Could you give
Mr.
it a shot?
McClung made a motion to give direction to have planning, get with the city attorney to establish an ordinance making everything from the museum to Highway 62 on both sides C1.
Is that your motion?
That is it.
And that's your second to
Yes,
that
sir.
motion?
That is my second.
Mr. Mitchell seconded.
Okay. Without any further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir?
we still haven't addressed the topic of rezoning 123 South Main from R1 to C1
Thank you.
for Mr. Brammers.
That was my next question.
Okay. Well, that was just to approve the motion. So, go ahead.
I make a motion that we postpone on this rezoning of 123